You've asked for it. Let's talk about our solar system. So I mentioned in the workshop tour video that this entire building is off-grid. That we just run off of a solar system and it pretty much covers all of our needs here. Now back in the day, where this shop currently sits used to be a homestead. And to get power to this homestead, there were power lines that crossed this field over here diagonally and went all the way through the field, an absolute pain in the butt to farm around. And once, the farmstead's been abandoned for years and years and years, Dad bought this ground and just said, you know what, power company, come get all that stuff out. We're never going to use this spot for anything. Whoops. We didn't really see this coming 20 years ago. But now that we're here and got this building working, to get power here, the power company doesn't want to cross the field, because if something goes wrong with the power lines, they'd have to drive through the crops and everything just to get to stuff. So I said they'd rather go around the section. Well, that over doubles the power line that you would need to get here. And just the power line and poles and everything was going to be 30-ish thousand, actually a little more than that. I think it was closer to 35,000. And that wasn't even including the cost of the transformer and the meter fees. Once we got the shed all done, we had this solar system professionally installed. Actually, a guy that I went to school with got a solar company. They do great work, and they did a really nice job with this whole setup. Let's go take a look at it. So out here on the south side of the building are our solar panels. These are 5,000 watts worth of panels at a nice little bit of an angle so that the snow melts and slides off pretty easy. And if it doesn't, I've also got a panel brush that I can use to extend out and brush off all the snow and everything. Now these panels don't tilt, they don't twist, they don't do anything really. We were looking for stability over everything. So these got oversized beams, oversized bracing. That way we can have some really ridiculous winds roll through here, and these things should hold up just fine. Now obviously, the sun does not shine all the time. So in here, we've got 10,000 watts worth of batteries. These batteries are made by Stores. They're a lithium iron phosphate battery. Each of them is 5,000 watts apiece. Now, these things have a really, really neat capability. You can plug these things into an AI monitoring system that'll determine how they discharge, how they charge. It's a very, very neat system, but it requires an active internet connection, which we don't have out here. So these things are incredibly nice batteries. We were lucky to get them because we got these during 2020 when you couldn't get anything, and it was an absolute nightmare trying to get them. And because I know someone was concerned about it, here, let me get the gimbal down here. They're not sitting directly on the concrete. I've got a gap in between. Got them up on these foam blocks. Plus, the rebar in this concrete here is not steel, it's fiberglass. So the reaction between batteries and the rebar and stuff in the concrete isn't as bad with fiberglass. At least that's what I've been told anyways. Now with those batteries, I said that they are lithium iron phosphate. They're a relative to lithium ion batteries. However, lithium ion batteries, while they're more capable of, higher amp draw and other things, I'm not a battery expert. Lithium ion batteries, I don't know if you've seen pictures of, on fire Teslas. Sometimes they can get unstable. These lithium iron phosphates, on the other hand, though they aren't capable as quite of a heavy load as the lithium ions, these lithium iron phosphates are a lot more stable and a lot more geared to, off-grid applications. Now running this thing is a solar converter. This particular one is only a 5,000 watt inverter. At the time, this was all we could get in 2020. The other ones were on back order with no expected by date. They were talking like year plus before we could get it. So this was all they had, but this is also the smallest that they used to make, and they don't make this anymore. I believe the smallest one they make now is like an 8,000 or 9,000, something like that. I'm not quite sure what their newer ones are, but for our application here, this one works just fine. We've got a really handy dandy touch screen here. Tells me how much power we're getting from the panels how much power that we're pulling with just the lights that I've got on right now. So we're pulling 390 watts, and the panels aren't quite covering it because it's evening and there's hardly any sun out. So it's having to pull a little bit from the batteries. Now, something really neat about this is it'll tell you all your stats about, your solar usage, over the day, month, year, everything. And it'll even tell you all the information about your batteries, temperature, draw, everything. Now, as nice as this system is, and we really like it, it's worked very well for us, it does have some limitations. As I mentioned earlier, high amp draw is one of those. And especially since that's only a 5,000 watt inverter, it taps out at 26 amps. Anything past 26 amps trips the breaker, shuts the whole system off. Now, everything that we're using in here isn't a super high amp draw. The things that tax the system the most are our big shop vac and the in-floor heat system. The shop vac, that pulls some serious watts, but we don't use it that often. The system can handle it just fine. The in-floor heat system, that is a constant draw when those pumps are running. Right now they're not running, so no big deal. But in the middle of the winter, when this place is trying to stay warm, it's running day and night, and that's about 400 watts, something like that, keeping all of those running. With no sun at all, like if it was just to stay perpetually dark for like 4 days, these pumps will stay active. And if I shut them down to low speed, right now they're on medium speed, they last even longer. Now notice, I said 0 sun. Those panels out there, that 5,000 watts worth of panels, and all I need is 400 watts to keep these things running. So if I can be pulling in 600 watts even, which is not a whole lot, but that's still more than enough to run the floor and put a little back in the batteries. The biggest issue we've had with electric draw is the air compressor. Had an air compressor that I wanted to put in here, but it just pulled way too much power. And we tried a slow starter, all sorts of stuff, but just could not make it work with this system. And I had to really scale down what kind of air compressor I can run in here. That's all the bigger of an air compressor that I can run. Just a tiny little 8-gallon oilless thing. And this thing is still almost too much for the system. When I first start this, it has to be almost completely out of air before I turn this on. If it tries to push against pressure, it pulls too many amps and trips the system. Now, as far as our chute goes, we have a gas-powered hydraulic power pack that we use for this because the electric hydraulic pack for this is just way too much for most any solar system to be able to handle. Plus, we take this out and about. It goes to different pastures, so having the gas-powered power pack just makes sense for us anyways. And of course, all of our lights and everything in here, they're LEDs. With all of them running, that's 390 watts, not too terrible. And most times with all the skylights we've got in here, we don't even need to run the lights. You can see really well in here with no lights if it's, decently bright out. So there we have it. Nice little tour of our solar system. Hope you found it interesting and somewhat educational. As always, thanks for stopping by.